Yo, Malkwe, I'm representing Ladi today. Thank you so much, Malkwe and Kayla, for that conversation. Obviously, important one. Looking at the issue around human trafficking and all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm not Ladi, I'm Ini. Ini John McCray is my name. We do 30 minutes of business right here before we head back to Kayla and Malkwe. So we start from the global space. As usual, oil prices were a little changed on Friday, but headed for a weekly decline after United States President Donald Trump issued a sweeping plan to boost U.S. production and demanded OPEC lower crude prices. Look at the numbers this morning. They were down, but just a couple of minutes before I came up here, we saw a little bit of increase, and that's why we have this in the green, 0.09% for Brent, $78.36 a barrel, while WTI also gained almost the same percentage, 0.08% to $74.68 a barrel. Now we know that for the week, Brent is down 3.18% and WTI 4.28%. President Trump had declared a national energy emergency. That was on Monday, rolling back environmental restrictions on energy infrastructure as part of a sweeping plan to maximize domestic oil and gas production. On Wednesday, he vowed to hit the European Union with tariffs and impose 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. And he said his administration was considering a 10% punitive duty on China. And if you listen to him at the World Economic Forum yesterday, he said, produce in America or pay the tariff, even though, of course, the World Trade Organization is not so happy with that. I'm talking about the World Trade Organization. While everyone seems to be giving a little bit of attention to the tariff, which President Donald Trump has started, towards and they seem to be looking the way of protectionism. The Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is asking for calm and reconsideration. In fact, yesterday she said, let's just chill, and she's asking for reconsideration looking at the macroeconomic issues. She was speaking during a session tagged Debating Tariffs at the ongoing 55th World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
If we have tit-for-tat retaliation, whether it's 25%, tariff 60%, and we go to where we were in the 1930s, we're going to see double-digit global GDP losses. Double-digit. That's catastrophic. Everyone will pay. Everyone. And the poor countries will pay even more. Second, if we just do not quite tit for tat, but even a version of that. Let's say we break into two trading blocks and, we're not trading across the world, and we layer in trade policy uncertainty. We've done that work too. We're going to lose 6.4% of real global GDP in the longer term. That's like losing the economy of Japan and Korea combined. $6.75 trillion. That's far from trivial, and that will hurt everyone also. So that's why I'm saying let our members, and they are listening, I want them to listen more. Could we use the methodologies? If you think you're being harmed, you as a member are entitled to launch a series of investigations to look at what is this harm, and then to show it. After that, you can request consultation from the economy that is harming you. And then we take it from there. There are processes laid out.
That was yesterday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Coming back home now, the official FX markets are looking at our naira continue to experience sustained demand pressure as usual. And so at the close of trade on Thursday, we saw NFEM down 0.09%, or rather up at 1,550 naira 48 kobo. We saw NAFEX 1,555 naira, a bit of gains at the close of trade. CBN 1,500 548 naira 50 kobo, also a gain of 0.29%. The CBN closing rate we saw was marginally up right there, and it seems to be the most valued of that at the close of trade. This is expected, this rate is expected even today. Now, Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves has dropped significantly in 2 weeks of this month, January, as it fell by $832.62 million between January 6th and January 21st to $40.09 billion, and that's according to latest numbers from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Before now, the gross external reserves stood at $40.92 billion January 6th, which represents a 2.03% decrease from its current level. The decline, which highlights the pressures on countries' external buffers, comes after about 5 months of relative stability and growth amidst ongoing currency market challenges and macroeconomic uncertainties. Analysts have raised concern that the FX reserves, which are currently at a 2-month low, could drop below the $40 billion level by the end of this month if the decline continues. Now, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, has said that it projects Nigeria's gross domestic product to grow by 5.5% this year. And this is expected to be driven by the federal government's ongoing economic reforms. The optimistic forecast was made at the launch of the NESG's 2025 Macroeconomic Outlook. During his presentation, the Chief Economist and Director of Research and Development at the NESG, Dr. Olusegun Omishaki, pointed out that the growth outlook hinges on some key strategies, which include the need to control inflation, prudent government spending, improving revenue generation, boosting foreign exchange liquidity and stability of the exchange market. The NESG chief economist, however, cautions that the GDP growth could plummet to 2.7% on the other hand if some of the economic policy reforms are reversed. But I guess to note that the 5.5% is even more optimistic than what the federal government's target is, in the budget. Now, experts have continued to express optimism that Nigeria's economy will be better off in 2025 if the budget of 49.7 trillion naira is effectively implemented with key reforms, despite the uncertainties that continue to impact macroeconomies and key sectors. This was the first of the discourse jointly organized by PricewaterhouseCoopers Nigeria and Business Day Media that's held in Lagos yesterday. One of the participants, chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Edele, shared a perspective that MPR hike has worsened the economic woes of Nigeria, and that he believes that the naira is undervalued and that about 1,500 for a dollar that we see is not the fair value of the currency. Other participants at the annual roundtable on Nigeria's economic outlook also explored investment opportunities and strategies for business leaders to thrive.
The outlook, I hope it's positive.
PricewaterhouseCoopers and Business Day Executive Roundtable gathers industry leaders, policymakers, and economic experts to dissect critical issues and provide insight into the nation's fiscal future.
Has been an exceptional partner alongside Business Day.
It is premised on the need for transparency and strategic planning as Nigeria's 2025 budget is set for implementation.
If you give equality, population, 3 times more in cent or weight than derivation, I think we're just joking. And I hope we're not going to joke here this morning.
Paper presentations outline key fiscal outlooks in 2025, drivers that will shape the dynamics of key sectors, opportunities, and implications for businesses.
2025 will be a better year. GDP will grow, 3.2, 3.5. That's what we think. We think inflation will abate to 20s. FX is stable, and I'm sure we understand what stability means. It doesn't mean it's going low. It means it will be in a predictable range in which you can do your business.
In the 2025 budget, several assumptions have been made. And the first one is the benchmark price. of $75. In our view as PwC, we believe that this is achievable.
The presentation set the stage for robust panel sessions. Panelists expressed their views on the implications of fiscal reform, the opportunities and risks that will emerge from the 2025 budget.
I know the central bank is going to introduce a code for FX by the end of the month. That would improve the transparency issue that you raised. Once you address transparency, you've taken up the pressure on the FX significantly.
The overall sentiment for PwC is one of positivity and optimism.
If you're not thinking digital, you're not thinking about how you're digitizing your product, how you're digitizing your go-to-market strategy, then you are falling behind. So tech, talent, and business model, those three are key strategies for success in our view going forward into 2025 and beyond.
For family businesses and the insights they can draw from this, it's really where are the opportunities that we can tap into for growth? Where are the opportunities we can tap into for productivity? And one of the major opportunities highlighted was around the exports of products across the continent.
Further to the insights shared at the roundtable, participants reiterate the significance of stakeholder engagement in shaping the budget and economic policy. The event will undoubtedly contribute to a more informed and strategic approach to the implementation of Nigeria's fiscal policies for 2025.
Well, it's a season of looking back at 2024 with the aim of giving projects or projection or forecast for 2025. So the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they've also had theirs at their inaugural press conference for the year. The president, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, shared that while 2025 GDP growth projection reflects optimism, attention must be given to fiscal discipline, growth drivers, and enabling environment that will enhance productivity in the real sector, which requires a comprehensive strategy. The Chamber, from him, shares some recommendations that the government could employ to ensure that the benefits of the reforms are experienced by Nigerians.
Recognizing the pivotal role of food security in national stability, the Chamber urges governments to adopt a multi-pronged approach to tackling insecurity, which is critical for agricultural resurgence. By leveraging the 2025 budgetary allocations, the government should introduce strategic incentives for sub-national governments, especially at grassroots levels, to channel significant investments into agricultural mechanization, smart farming technologies, and climate-resilient crop production. 2. To stimulate sustained private sector investment in agriculture, the Chamber recommends that the central bank should introduce targeted incentives for financial institutions to expand credit facilities for agriculture and agro-processing industries. This could include risk-sharing mechanisms, favorable credit guarantee schemes, and structured partnerships with agri-tech firms to unlock untapped potentials. 3. With more expectations from the recently created Ministry of Livestock Development, the government has a unique opportunity to implement innovative and data-driven processes and policies.
A whole lot going on there, looking at the macroeconomy of Nigeria and expectations, projections for the year 2025. Of course, we'll continue in that line of conversation right here on Business Morning, but let's take a breather. When we come back, we do have a conversation on that. Join us again. Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, where we do business, of course, for just about 30 minutes. Now, just before that break, we're looking at economic forecast for the year 2025. But a lot of ease jump out at you when you read those forecasts if the government will sustain the reforms on the one hand. Look at challenges that might hamper the benefits of those reports. And one of that seems to be infrastructure. So Lagos, I guess, the commercial capital of Nigeria, ought to take stock and see what they need. especially when you look at the rural and urban population in Nigeria. Lagos holds a whole lot of that, expectedly being the commercial capital. Let's do Lagos for a bit. Before we look at that issue of rural-urban migration and closing the gap to have a more inclusive development in the year 2025. That's the conversation waiting for us after this report.
It's the second time in a week that the Lagos State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Tokunbo Wahab, is out for an inspection exercise. This time, the Commissioner and his team visit market areas in Lagos to see the level of environmental infractions going on. Obviously, this area is unkempt. Akmogbon Underbridge is another spot taken over by poultry and cattle businessmen. The Commissioner asks them to vacate the space. The aerial view of Ibuteru shows the rooftop of structures and makeshift shops built on drainage setback. The drainage has also been covered with wood planks by people who occupy the space to sell their goods, and government says such acts will not be tolerated.
You can't and we won't allow anybody make this state an operation state where life becomes nasty, British and short. These are public infrastructure built for public use. Now they have made them shops, and we have to stop it, and we are stopping it right away.
The Commissioner wants market operators to maintain designated market spaces as allocated by the local governments and keep the environment clean.
Before now, the governor had awarded the contract for the regeneration of Lagos Island, the drainage system, and then the road infrastructure. However, we noticed some areas were not part of it, and they are already captured in the different projects. So we came in this point to assess them, and I'm glad you were there with us. People had willfully built to narrow down our collectors' paths, turn them to the trading points, trading on most of them, and blocked them at some point. So what we have asked them to do is kindly come and serve the notices, and then let them remove these contraventions, so we can clean up and then do the right thing for the public.
48 hours relocation notice has been issued by the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources to illegal stall owners on drainage setbacks. If not adhered to, government says the area will be cleared for free movement around the marketplace.
Well, the picture there doesn't look so much like the commercial capital of Nigeria, right? But a whole lot of people still flock to Lagos. I guess that's putting a strain on infrastructure, and we see the population trying to create space for themselves, which is what Lagos state government is checking at this time. Now, in 2023, numbers from the World Bank shows that about 45% of Nigeria's population lived in the rural areas. While this is a decrease from what we had in 2022, 2022 about 46.5%. Most Nigerians, of course, we know the food come from the rural areas. We have more poverty there, and so we see the migration to the urban putting pressure on the infrastructure in those urban areas. Top on the list, Lagos, and then the federal capital, Abuja, and all of that. What's the need to balance this population? That's what Daisy Omokungbe is speaking with us. Daisy Omokungbe is the Executive Director of PROMAD and joins us from Bradford. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. My pleasure to be on the show this morning.
So we talk about inclusive development as a way of having sustainable development, but what are the pros and cons of the imbalance in population between rural and urban areas of a country?
Pardon?
I was asking the pros and cons of having imbalance between the rural and urban population or residents.
Yeah, so the imbalance in between the rural and urban centers in Nigeria, or urban cities and towns in Nigeria, is as a result of so many things. You could talk about economic opportunities You could talk about infrastructures. You could talk about availability of healthcare services. And you've rightly mentioned the issue of migration, as well as the issues of availability of technology and innovation services. All of these, when you look at them in depth, it contributes to while we are having the movement from the rural areas to the urban areas. And this is because people naturally will always move to where things appear to be better in terms of opportunities that can be leveraged, and people will move. But in Nigeria, the case is the same, but it is much more because we are having some issues around our governance, the way government design policies, and the ways the 3 tiers of government have been working in Nigeria in the past years. And if not because of the recent pronouncement by the Supreme Court, you see that the closest tiers of government is the local government, very close to the people. But in the last 20 years, the local government has almost been dead and buried in terms of governance and administration. And if that has been happening, it means that little or nothing in terms of bringing policies up, in terms of activities and projects and programs of government that will be able to facilitate infrastructural development, access to health care services, educations in the rural areas have been close to zero, because the arm of government that is closer to them, that's supposed to deliver these services, are almost in a death situation. So, but thanks to the Tinubu-led administration that have approached the Supreme Court of the land to ask that local governments need to be what? Independent. And we begin to see that the government is working towards that, and the states, by what we have seen, at a reasonable extent, they are cooperating to ensure that this comes to stay. But then there are things, a whole lot of things that needs to follow in terms of ensuring that the local government will not just have access to their funds indirectly, because it's one thing to have these funds available to them. It is another thing to have credible people at this level of governance to be able to drive development agenda and carry the people along, execute projects that really meet the needs of the people, not focusing on frivolities, buying more cars for local legislators or marrying more wives, and all of these issues needs to be dealt with.
So how do you think it should be dealt with? Because I hear you sounding optimistic, like a whole lot of people who have spoken about the year 2025, but you have that if again, that yes, it should begin from the local government, and we seem to have started with the, empowerment of the local government council, but how do we manage that empowerment so there's no abuse? What do you think can be put in place for that?
Okay, so the data available so far, for instance, the 32 states of the Federation have presented and approved their budget for 2025, and these 32, according to the data program that I've been able to have access to this moment, we have the budget totaling 23 trillion naira. This is not too big, but it is something that, if well implemented across these states and across the local levels, is going to translate to development. So, looking at the empowerment at the local government level, organizations, non-profit organizations, NGOs, CSOs, government at the federal level that have been able to champion this needs to come up with capacity building programs for local government executives, local government legislators, to really understand what they should be doing at the levels of that governance. Because it is one thing, like I said, to have these resources for them, but would they be able to design budgets? In the last few years, we have seen only few local government have budget that they will be working with on an annual basis. So going forward, we should be having local governments that will be able to design budget in a way that really listen to the people, collect data, analyze those data to be able to see what the data is saying in terms of what the people needs and where are these needs coming from. How should government focus on that? So we ensure, so that we can ensure that this funding that is the funding that is available can be channeled to real activities that will enhance growth and development. On the other hand, improving agriculture is very important, and that can be linked to the budget that I talked about. And then balance of politics and governance. We have seen in the past where chairman, whether caretaker or elected, only focuses on politics, using the instrument of office to destabilize cities and towns under their leadership. This is not, we should move away from such practices. Going forward, there should be the need of balancing politics and governance. For me, I always advise that there is need to balance politics and governance, because the reason why we elected people into office is for the purpose of governance, administration of our common resources to be able to meet the needs of everyone. That is the reason of government. But then, performing in office as an elected official or appointed official is not enough. You also need to balance the politics, because if that does not happen, you could see that one performing governor or one performing local government chairman can be removed overnight if the politics is not balanced. So for me, going forward, there is need for us to balance politics and governance at the local level. And this will enhance that we have the political will, and also we have the capacity on the governance side to be able to marry the two and deliver development to the people. On the other side, also, citizens have a great role to play in terms of ensuring that their local government chairman use this direct funding that is coming to them now to actually power development by ensuring that they participate, ask for accountability and transparency in how these funds will be deployed to the activities of local government at their levels.
Yeah, Daisy, I guess that is why we had the structure where the governors were put like directly on top of the local government council. But we saw that system abused in a lot of ways and in a lot of states. So now, if we say we want to keep the local government chairman or councillors in check, I wonder what structure you think we can put in place to ensure that, because as you noted, having the fund is one thing, but using the fund effectively is another. You mentioned the role of the citizens, but sometimes it does seem like even the citizens can get really sentimental and just want to satisfy their personal needs and not look at the bigger picture of the council as a whole.
Okay, so trying to address that, for me, the issues that we need to look at is following the principle of participatory governance. If you look at the design or the creation of local government, it has to do with community activities. And then if we have to really follow that principle, there is need to instill participatory governance approach in our local government system. And when I'm talking about this, is a situation where all stakeholders, not just the politician, all stakeholders will be able to come together on one table and be able to say, look, this is what we are working towards in the next 4 years. And then how do we break down this into different structures, maybe for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, and for the next 4 years. So when we have all of this, and then we're able to set in place what we call the key performance indicators, and then the tracking and monitoring system. And that is where the role of the citizens comes into play, in ensuring that everything that has been put into the plan will be monitored and tracked. Not that when the fund comes, the chairman will just do whatever he likes when he brings together the councillors maybe one of the top few influential community leaders. So we should move away from this. It is only when we work in collectivism that we can advance development at the rural level and be able to provide the essential social services that will drive healthcare, that will drive education, that will drive agricultural innovation and agribusiness, which the rural area is known for. When we were growing up, we saw how local government was central to issues of governance and development. If I tell you now the primary school where I started from in my local area then, in our village where my father was doing farming, is no longer in operation because people have moved their children from that local community to at least a town where they are sure that they will get better education. So these are the issues that needs to be addressed in terms of how we govern the local government. Yeah. And local government also needs things around building structures and frameworks for governance to work, because the way it is right now, if we continue with that, with the kind of funding that is coming to them, we might not get the needed result that the local government autonomy is supposed to bring to the table.
Yeah, it does sound like, even with the last example that you gave, that this could be beyond the local government. For instance, you talked about schools. We see a lot of scenarios where people move, for instance, to Lagos. Lagos Island is crowded because of the offices around there. You are in the UK, and I know that over there and other Western developed countries, people stay in areas that, I mean, look at Davos, where the world is meeting. It's like our village, you know. So it goes back to the issue of infrastructure. And I wonder how much or how fast that can be done to discourage this rural-urban movement.
Okay, so infrastructures is not what you develop overnight. It must be powered by effective planning, and this planning has to do with first listening to what is on ground, trying to investigate, trying to use data, collect data, and analyze this data. What exactly do we need? So when we get all of that done, then we can move to the pace of the effective planning that I talked about, where this can be driven by budget. So when the budget comes and we are able to get that passed and approved, then how do we implement? So this takes a lot of time, but then what is most important is starting and then being committed to it to ensure that we get the needed result. So in stopping migration, infrastructure is very key. Like I said earlier, people tend to move to where they think that they will have access to better things or basic things of life. So for instance, we have been talking about improving agriculture over the years, but then where are the infrastructures for people, young people to invest in agriculture? How many local governments have one tractor across the country? Just one, let's say one, all around. 774 local governments. How many of them have one functional tractor? And are we expecting young people who have gone to the universities or polytechnic or college of education to come back and be practicing farming the way their father or parent practiced farming? So all of this needs to be taken into consideration. And if we are to stop or reduce migration from rural areas to urban areas, which is very important at this moment because of food inflation, means that people are no longer producing foods in our farms because they are moving. So if we have to reduce that, we need to provide an enabling environment that will ensure or help young people to move into agriculture, even our elderly ones that are there, to scale on their farming practices and be able to drive development, support food security in the country. And you will see, just recently we have seen the price of how the prices of cocoa is soaring. So what is our government, the local government and the state government doing about this in order to ensure that we produce more cocoa, we generate more jobs, we generate more income for the country, and be able to sustain our development efforts.
All right, we do hope we will see the result of more attention, given to this, especially as you mentioned there, your last point, agriculture, food security is number one on the list. Thank you so much, Executive Director of ProMad, Daisy Omokungbe, for your time this morning.
I'm grateful, with my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, just before we head back to Sunrise Daily Studio, tell you that the market yesterday ended in the red, 0.05%. We lost at 103,000 level for the all share, closed at 102,788. Activity was mostly green, but we had volume in the red, and we saw banking as the only survivor again yesterday. Second trading session that we have, that banking gained 1% because of the fugaz, obviously, consumer goods, industrial goods, insurance, oil and gas, all ended in the red. We'll see what the market numbers will have at intraday when we will do this again, and then we'll have 55 minutes during Business Incorporated. I'm Ini John Mekwa, handing you back to Kela and Mark, and I'll see you at 1 p.m.